I did the presentation last year for the first summit, and what I kind of did was an exposure of what we have in Sublett County. I'll go through my background and a couple other things, but Sublett County is not what a lot of folks think. I mean, it is a great place. We do have some amazing things, and I'd like to thank those of you from out of town for showing up during mosquito feeding season to kind of take the pressure off of everybody else. So, my name is Toby Terrell. I've been with the Sheriff's Office now for about 16 years, and we'll see if all this technology works. Renee called me up and she said, hey, or she sent me an email and said, hey, I need a title for your speech this year, your presentation. I said, all right, give me a couple minutes. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, what am I going to talk about? I don't want to use the same stuff I used last year in case there's somebody who came and then I feel like I'm gypping you. So I didn't do that. So I came up with opioids, synthetics, and cannabis. Oh my. Kind of going with the yellow brick road theory here, and it's far from the yellow brick road in what we're dealing with. I tried to come up with a clever thing in regards to the photo there. We have someone who's looking for a brain, someone for a heart, and someone for courage, which ties into this in regards to the drugs. Because on our end of things, we're dealing with folks that are sometimes at their worst. And when I do these presentations, I have to try to step out of that role and look at the other folks that I'm talking to, because I have folks on the other end who see the positives of everything going on. And we need both ends of that for this whole thing to work. So this is going to be my last reference to the Wizard of Oz, and notice I didn't play the song so you won't be humming it all day. We're off to see the wizard. Okay, my background, I graduated from the University of Wyoming. I won't say what year. Have a BS in education, which BS is kind of fitting given some of the things that I do. I taught agricultural education and FFA at Pinedale High School for 10 years from 1991 to 2001. I had 6 months in Montana before that, and then Pinedale came open and I was lucky enough to get hired here. Back in 2001, my son, because I taught FFA, I was very involved. We had a greenhouse, we had fish, I was an ag teacher officer for the state, and I was traveling a lot. And if you know FFA, you know what it's all about. So I was tucking my son in when he was 9 years old, and he says, Dad, why is it you have time for everybody else's kids and not us? Now, if that doesn't rip your heart out, I don't know what will. So within 2 weeks, I had applications in at Highway Patrol and also at the Sheriff's Office, and then was hired at the Sheriff's Office. My son now, I have to brag a little bit, just finished his second year of law school. He'll graduate next year with his Juris Doctorate of Law and also a Master's in Environmental and Natural Resources. And my daughter just graduated from UW with a major in psychology, minor in sociology. And so she's looking at PhD programs next year. So I think we've done well. So pretty proud of my kids. At the Sublett County Sheriff's Office, I worked in detentions for less than a year. I then went to the road. While on the road, I was a narcotics canine handler from 2004 to 2012. Field training officer, I was on the narcotics task force when Casey started it back in 2005, August 30th, 2005. My first day on the task force, had a week vacation, came and started. And I had 11 incredible years on the task force. I got to grow my hair long, wear t-shirts to work. Now I have to be an adult, because my daughter calls it, Dad, you're doing well at adulting. So it's an incredible experience, but it changes you forever. The glasses I wear today are clear, but the glasses inside here aren't. You become very tainted with what you deal with, and it's nice to get out and deal with folks in other areas to see that there are still positives out there. So thank you for everything that you do. I was on the DCI task force in Sweetwater County, SWET. I'm also still cross-credentialed, as are my task force officers with DCI. And when Casey came on board back in July of last year, he promoted me, silly guy, promoted me to detective sergeant, so I oversee investigations and the task force now. So that's a quick and dirty of my history. So what are our biggest problems in Sublett County? You know, when you ask folks what's going on, what do we have to deal with? Most of them say, well, it's alcohol and weed. You know, when I was in school teaching, alcohol, marijuana, you'd hear about occasional things, and now that I talk to past students, because I'm dealing with kids of my students, there were other things there. We had methamphetamine in the school. Did I know at the time? No. I didn't even really know what meth or tweak was until I got into law enforcement and started with the task force. You know, we'd run into it. But here's the things that we're dealing with in Sublett County. It's not just Salt Lake. It's not Rock Springs. It's not Evanston. This is Pinedale, Big Piney, Marbleton, Daniel, Bondurant, everywhere. We got marijuana, THC edibles, THC wax, THC oil, plant material, and live plants. Methamphetamine, cocaine, LSD, LSA, prescription medications, including but not limited to fentanyl, Xanax, Adderall, Dilaudid, Oxycodone, Oxycontin, hydrocodone. Okay, now I rattle them off. Fentanyl, Dilaudid. It's not like we're talking about ibuprofen. We're talking about stuff that's normally prescribed to people that are terminal. Am I wrong? I mean, they're not necessarily all dying, but they need some serious pain relief. That's some scary stuff, because we have people out there chewing up fentanyl patches, okay, to get a high. Going on down, psilocybin mushrooms, MDMA, heroin, PCP, and this year the task force ran into a case where we had fentanyl powder being included in mixed packages called party favors. Fentanyl, LSD, PCP coming up from Salt Lake City. Okay, and we're talking about people in their 20s that are bringing this stuff up, young 20s. And that stuff goes to our kids. Sublett County. If that doesn't scare the holy begonies out of you, I don't know what will. And that's why we have a task force, and luckily I have a sheriff and a board of commissioners that take care of us and make this possible for us to pursue these things. So on these pictures up here, I thought it was kind of interesting because I talk about edibles, I talk about the THC stuff. I was happy to see the no table back here. So who's ever responsible for that, thank you. We have a lot of people pushing on the other side, a lot of big money, saying, oh, it's not bad, little Timmy doesn't have seizures, blah, 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 blah. They get a crack in the glass with little Timmy, and the next thing you know, it's recreational. It's this stuff that's up on the board behind me. All these items right here are from traffic stops in Sublett County. This is just a smidgen. Have you all seen that Subaru commercial where the dad's cleaning out the Subaru and he's finding the dried flour, the old Band-Aid, and he looks back and he sees his daughter, you know, when she broke her leg, and her daughter at prom, and his daughter doing this and his daughter doing that. When I go through these pictures, that's what it reminds me of. It is, because I go through photos of past cases and things that I've helped work, and it's a lot of memories of, man, we've come a long way. You know, the meth that I started dealing with back in the day was this little brown, dirty powder. Now we're getting beautiful crystal shards, beautiful in a relative form. I mean, if they look like crystals. The marijuana we dealt with, we used to deal with old Mexican brickweed and shake. Y'all remember that spinach that your mom would buy that was frozen and in a block? And she'd cook it and it was mushy and nasty? That's what the weed represented that we were getting. We were literally seeing blocks of stuff. Now we've got some rockin' buds coming up. Okay, high quality products, and it's scary because of the THC content and everything else that we're dealing with, and people don't know. And you have some incredible speakers. Ben Court is coming in. He'll cover a lot of the marijuana stuff. You have some opioid things coming in. So I don't want to step on a lot of toes, but that's the cool thing about going first is I get to say what I want first. So hopefully I'm not wrong. So on the pictures up here, the cookies on the very top, these are THC cookies, chocolate chip cookies. The next thing, we have a chocolate bar. Okay, in the middle, that's kind of a collection of different items. Grinders, wax, plant material. That's one traffic stop right there in the middle. That's one traffic stop. Going back up, you see the orange container. Again, more different marijuana products. In the top right, the zoot juice. You take that and you squirt it in your water, you squirt it in your cocktail, you squirt it in whatever you want. It's THC, liquid THC. They have two types. You can have the kind if you want to party all night, have a good time, or you can have the kind if you want to just chill, relax, mellow out, play some Xbox, eat some Cheetos. Okay? Go online and look it up. I mean, it's right there, it's readily available. They even list what states you can buy it in. Traffic stop. Go on, she said I have a pointer on here, so we'll try. There we go. That right there, that's a mist spray, THC. Kind of like we have the breath fresheners. 5 squirts is a dose. Who would have thought? You know, back in the day, 11, 12 years ago, we'd be dealing with this kind of stuff. Here's candies. Marijuana candies, THC. You have caramel flavor, you have coffee flavor, you have peanut butter flavor. Okay? Right here, that's kind of an interesting one. The bottle on the right is actually a juice thing that you can drink that's THC, but this guy went above and beyond. He was a hardcore user. He didn't want to have anything go to waste. And so he took all of his other waste products, put them in an Everclear bottle with Everclear, and he was extracting it. He said he was using it for, like he'd put it on his skin for a topical solution to help with different things. Yeah. Crazy stuff. And then that right there is the traffic stop that stuff came from. Now you can't really see it, but right here on that corner, that's an AR-15 and then a couple semi-automatic handguns with loaded magazines. Okay, was he going to climb a bell tower and take out a, no, but do you have problems with guns and drugs and everything else? Yeah, that's a traffic stop. That's right in front of Obo's, a few blocks down from here. The guy had literally stopped, was waiting to get some money from Ridley's at Western Union so he could continue his trip, decided while he was here, he'd go ahead and have a smoke. So he smoked and kind of slumped over his wheel, and luckily one of our citizens called, and our guys went and investigated. Sublett County, Pinedale. Right in the evening time at Obo's. How many of your kids, how many of your family are driving on that road, are going to that store, and that's what our folks are dealing with every day. There's a couple times I might step on a soapbox, so I apologize. But we hear about too many cops, this and that. Take a look at this stuff that's out there. It's not the case. We need the guys out there doing what they're doing. If you have questions at any time, please raise your hands. I like it pretty casual if you can't tell. So, this is another case that task force worked. We did a search warrant on a house after several controlled buys. This cooler right here, I knew I'd do that. That cooler right there is one of those big white coolers that's about this big. That picture doesn't do it justice. And all the bottles right there are that size. That's marijuana. That's how this guy made his living, is he'd go back to California, buy the weed, or get it fronted to him, bring it back and sell it in our community. That's how he made his living. He didn't have a job other than selling weed in Sublett County. How many of y'all knew we had folks like that really living in Sublett County, or wanted to think? Okay, yeah, it goes on. If you've dipped your foot in the tainted paint and seen that world, but a lot of folks don't have any idea. The stuff on top is butter, marijuana butter that he made himself. That's about 0.8 of a pound, correct, Carson? A marijuana butter. They said the one guy, I won't use names or anything like that, he went to do a buy one time, sat down, this guy gave him basically a shot glass of that. He knocked it down and was out on the couch for hours. That's how potent this stuff is. You're going to get into the THC levels, plant material. When I was young, which I'm not really that old, but when I was younger, we're looking at 7%, maybe up to 12. I mean, 12 is really pushing it back then. We're over 37% now on plant material for THC level. That's crazy. Then you get into the waxes, which some of the items that we had, there we go. On here you see these little bottles with the white lids, the waxes, the shatter. You're hitting over 90% THC level. It's a refined product, and they'll take a dab. That's what they call it, is dabbing. So they'll take literally just a dab. When we were growing up, my grandparents would have nut things. You dig nuts out of nutshells. There must have been a thing back then. It looks like that. You take just a little dab and you smoke it, and that's the equivalent of one whole joint. Just like that. Medically, if I was to shoot a line directly across this room, everybody can see that line? Well, kind of like, I want you to picture a straight line. You're going to put your straight across the room. Consider that your CBD. Okay, CBD is the medically good part of marijuana. And man, it's hard to say that, but that's the part that's going to help little Timmy. And I'm all about helping little Timmy. Now I want you to take a line off my arm like this. You see the difference right there? That line is the THC. That's the stuff that gets you high. Okay? This part right here, this is the part that, yeah, it does help some people. There are some things that supposedly are shown that it would help, but there's also things that the pharmaceutical industry has done to create that are available and that they're legal. I don't want to argue. I see that in your eyes. You go, ooh. Okay, so we have the CBD, we have the THC, and I'm not going to get too much because I think Ben Cord will talk about that too. But he said one of the best things I've ever heard when it comes to this argument. You don't smoke medicine. That's Ben Cord's statement. I'll give him full credit. You don't smoke medicine. Okay, the CBD, they're not working on that. This is what they're increasing, and why? Because the more this increases, the more the profits increase. That's what it's all about, man, is the money. It reminds me of a very interesting conversation I had with my son. We all, like Mother's Day weekend, we went down and did a Rockies game and stuff. And we're talking about the legalization of marijuana because we were going down there. No, I didn't buy anything. But we were talking about it, and my son being in the law school, and now he's all, he's book learned and all that. Dad, what's the difference between legalizing marijuana and alcohol? Alcohol is legal. You have problems with alcohol. Exactly. We do have problems with alcohol. Well, does that mean alcohol should be outlawed? Man, the smarter he gets, the harder he is to fight with. That's a good question. As far as the legalization thing. I'm not a proponent of legalization of marijuana. I think if we can draw the medical aspect out, the CBD, and use that for little Timmy, and I'm not picking on little Timmy, please understand that's just an easy way to refer to the medical use. She was looking at him. Have I made you mad? Not yet? Yeah. Oh no, her right here. Okay. I'm not against CBD. I'm not against someone getting something that can help them out if they're having issues in life. I'm against the THC thing. And this is why. Because it's not being used for what it's initially cracked the glass for, as far as helping little Timmy. So I'm kind of getting off on a tangent. So this stuff right here, this was a great case. Task Force did an excellent job. Like I said, controlled purchases, search warrants. This is just a sampling of what we got out of the house. I mean, the stuff was under the bed. We had buds laying on the floor where it dropped. So next thing I want to get into, remember the opioid synthetics and cannabis, oh my, fentanyl. That's one thing that our law enforcement professionals, EMS, everybody's running into right now. And like I stated in the very beginning, with all the different products that we're running into, this is one of them. This is a scary one. Let's see, okay. Fentanyl really impacted us. Highway Patrol and DCI put a policy in place. They're not testing any powder products as far as doing a NARC test. When I started this gig, we had a thing right here, a NIC kit or a NARC kit, where we would take just a little sample, put it in there, and it has different chemicals for the different types of drugs that you want to test. We would do it, we'd knock a few out in a night, to test the drugs, get a presumptive positive for an arrest or for a charge. Now, you can't do that. We have a policy in place, no testing of powdered substances. Okay, because of this fentanyl stuff. So if you take a look, compare it to morphine, the very top yellow is morphine. Heroin, this is a pretty simplified view of it, but heroin is twice as potent as morphine. If you go on to fentanyl, which is the red one, that's 100 times more potent than morphine. And now we're getting the carfentanil, which is 10,000 times more potent than morphine. Okay, how much does it take to affect you, to cause damage to you? There's a comparison. That white dot right there, those little white dots, that could be a fatal dose for you and I. Okay, so our guys and gals are out there stopping cars, doing searches of cars in the middle of the night, middle of the day, hopefully wearing gloves. But what's it going to come to as far as, officer safety and the safety of our community? Because These people go to parks to use their drugs, sitting in front of oboes using drugs. What's the exposure risk that we have? If you go online, there's a video by the DEA, just do DEA fentanyl video. And there's two task force guys that actually were packaging evidence, and the one closed up the bag, and just a small puff came out of the bag. These two guys got dosed, had to be taken to the hospital. The one guy thought he was dying, or both of them thought they were dying, literally, just from that minute exposure. So please, the DEA fentanyl video, I recommend that. So in looking at some of the different things that we have, the CDC reported 33,091 deaths in 2015, which are the result of opioid overdoses alone. Of those deaths, 9580 were caused by synthetic opioids. We deal a lot with the WORKS program through the Pharmacy Board in the state of Wyoming through the task force and getting evidence for cases. If we have a heroin overdose, they count that as an opioid overdose for the state as far as their statistics. So when they see opioid deaths, they're counting heroin in that. Okay, the Pharmacy Board I don't think is real fond of it. I'm not going to speak for them, but just in our conversation, because that's not a legal opioid. But it's scary, the number of things that we have. The fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances have been combined with heroin and other synthetic opioids such as U47700 to create a deadly opioid mix called Gray Death. How many of y'all have heard of Gray Death? Okay, down in Florida especially is where it's hitting, and up the East Coast. With this stuff, some of the interesting things that I saw, because when all this stuff comes out, I try to read and find out what we're running into, because a few years down the road, kind of like music, it'll hit here. Hopefully we never hit this stuff. But the guy was saying what was scariest of all is he's there dealing with this person who had overdosed and died, and some other users came up and were talking, didn't realize he was a cop. Well, where did he get it? And they weren't saying to try to avoid it. They were trying to figure out where he got it so they could use it. And this guy's laying there dead. Brain, heart, courage. Makes you wonder. So law enforcement personnel or any first responders who encounter fentanyl or fentanyl-related substances should not take samples or otherwise disturb any powdered substances without employing proper PPE, personal protective equipment. There was a thing that came out, a coroner just put it out saying do not use latex gloves because they think latex will allow the passage of the fentanyl. And it gets on your skin, gets up in your nasal cavity, wherever, and you're dosed. So we've come to a point now where, this is just back in May, cop doing a search on a traffic stop, almost overdoses, they use Narcan on him and bring him back. Dude had his cup of coffee, his orange juice, kissed his kids goodbye and his bride, went off and did his job expecting to come back at the end of his tour that night, searched the car trying to take drugs off the street, and that's where he winds up. It's scary. So now when we look at search warrants, this is actually a fentanyl search warrant that was being conducted, and that's the type of PPE that people are making them wear or have to wear because of the danger of this drug. I think back to the days even before I was on the task force, the photos of the DCI task force kicking in doors and doing search warrants and things like that, and you had guys in raid vests and ponytails and maybe gloves, guns drawn, going through the door. This is what you're seeing now. It's like we're going into a full-fledged meth lab to just do a simple search warrant. And if you haven't worn one of these suits or had to work in one of these suits, Lance has some nice pictures of me doing one on a car one time. It's miserable. It's miserable. You feel like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So, okay. With the opioid thing, I'm very proud that the task force, I got Daniel, well, we won't mention her name, no. Daniel Cooper and Carson Turner on our task force. We're looking at the opioid stuff in Sublett County, and I know they've worked with the clinic, they work with Kyla Bowers at Altitude Drug. Instead of just dealing with the problem, they're trying to come up with a solution for the problem. Okay, I'll give you just a quick side note on this. A few years ago, I was involved in an incident out at the range where I fired a shot. It just, I mean, if it was a lottery winning day, this would be the day. hit a divot on a steel target, fragmented and came back. I got a chunk about 1/4 of an inch long in my neck still. Because of where it's located, we're not going to take it out unless it gets really, really bad. It's still there. I got a chunk in my hand. Some other chunks were taken out. A lot of pain goes with something like this. You don't realize it. Where that chunk is sitting, there's a little bitty hole where all the nerves come through for that side of the face. So you deal with a chronic pain. So I asked the doctor, I'm trying to deal with it. I can't sleep. I'm having issues. I asked the doctor, I said, dude, how long does this take before it stops? Well, he says, your body will actually adapt to it and put some tissue around it and you'll stop feeling it. I said, well, how long does that take? He goes, I don't know, I've never been shot before. Great, doc, thanks. Okay. So I'm thinking, well, what are some alternatives that I have? Well, my bride has a friend that worked at a pain clinic down in Rock Springs. I haven't told a lot of people this, so you're welcome. Had a friend who just started working at a pain clinic in Rock Springs, and one thing they were looking at was acupuncture as a means to help relieve pain. I thought, rock on, I'm good with that. And it beats popping pills, especially because of what I do. They seem to think when you carry a gun that you shouldn't be high. That's just a joke, Sheriff, it's just a joke. So I go down there under the impression that I'm going to start trying to get some acupuncture and some other treatment. Okay, I'm not going to take herbs or anything like that, and it works. If anybody takes herbs, I understand it could work, but politically correct. So I go down there for the acupuncture. They actually brought 3 different doctors in. They all had their laptops. Well, what's going on with you? What happened? What do you have? I explained, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start you off on this. We're going to see if that helps you, and then we're going to move on from there. We're looking at acupuncture, but we haven't really incorporated it into our program yet. Okay, I'm good with that. So they started me on pills. And that's where it all began. Okay, because instead of just staying here, your body gets used to it. Now I'm not talking about ibuprofen and acetaminophen. I'm talking Oxycontin, Oxycodone, Tramadol, and other things that I don't even remember what they were, to where I wasn't myself at all. I had issues with memory. I had problems at home. I wasn't beating my wife or anything like that. You're not yourself. You don't want to do anything. So I went to him, I said, man, what can we do? Well, we'll work on that, but in the meantime, use this. And it kept escalating to the point where one December I finally went to him, I said, dude, I can't do this. I don't want to do this anymore. It was scary. I tried to get off cold turkey myself. I thought, you know what? No way, baby. I'm not doing it. And I'd go out and I'd lay on the couch because I couldn't stay in bed with my bride because my entire body felt like I had electricity jolting through it. Okay? Dosed down, weaned off, totally clean, have been for a while, long while. But that's how easy it happens. Okay? And that's a law enforcement guy trying to get some pain relief for shrapnel in his neck. Now you can only imagine, I think the video is going to show the gal that Renee worked with. So keep that in mind as you're looking at these things. One cool thing about going to that pain clinic is I had a nurse with a conscience. She said, hey, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a guy who left here yesterday with a prescription for 1,200 pills for a month. How do you take 1,200 pills in a month? Okay, and we're talking the same quality of things. Oxycontin, Oxycodone. She didn't have to tell me the name. I knew the name. When I threw it out there, she just kind of did the, ah. That's scary. That person has long since moved from Sublett County because things got a little warm for him. As a warrant. But yeah, that's scary. So it's something to keep in mind with. And I didn't share that. I just want you to see how easy it is. I know that our clinic is working hard. They have contracts with folks that are on these drugs. They're trying to keep things straight and clear to help the people that need help. So this right here is what I'm proud of with the task force as far as what they're recommending. We met with Albert Summers, the sheriff, and the task force, and Renee met with Albert to go over this and see what we could start looking at for some legislation. But in talking to one of the pharmacies here in town over a 3-month period in 2016, for the top 5 drugs, we had 45,349 capsules, tablets, etc. of narcotics that were dispensed. Sublett County, one pharmacy. Okay? 4 of the top 5 are pain medications. You see the numbers up there. Percocet, Ambien, hydrocodone, with an average of 113 per prescription refilled on the hydrocodone. 4,847 tablets of tramadol. 3-month period. So Carson Turner went and used his calculator, and I'm assuming he used a calculator because I checked them and they were right. Of these numbers, if you take that on average for a year, this is what you're looking at for distribution on a legal side. 181,396 total narcotics dispensed, one pharmacy. And this pharmacist is very responsible. Checks the prescription database. Does a great job on keeping track of things. Calls us when we need to be called. So as you go down, on average, when they get into their investigations and we look at the illegal distribution of these pills, average price is $1 a milligram. So if you take a look at 113 tablets, 10 milligrams of hydrocodone, $1,130 is the potential street value of that bottle of pills. The really poopy part, a lot of these folks either get it via the state covering it, insurance is covering it. I know of a person who went and got a prescription the other day. It was like $2 for a prescription. Turn around and sell it for this. You see why folks would want to do this? That's the spooky part. So the problem that we run into, these folks tend to doctor shop. So they'll go to one, oh man, my back. Or they'll go to a dentist. You know, I've had this pain in my jaw. And they're good at it. They're really good. And they'll say, can you at least knock me out something, doc? Can you give me something? And so they'll try to do the right thing and help these folks out. I'm not picking on doctors, please. I'm not picking on doctors. Okay? So we have a system where you have these people trying to exploit it. You got drug dealers, addicts exploiting the system, and you have doctors trying to do the right thing. Well, how do you control it? What do you do? The proposed solution, implement a web-based computer service thing, database, where they go in and check it. So anybody with the DEA license can access the prescription narcotic records. Now, as far as the logistics of it all, yeah, there are some things. Carson has been really talking to folks, and Danielle with the state and some other people about what it would take to do this and costs. Okay, and they're not reinventing the wheel, they're just making it a little rounder. Because if you take a look, especially back east, at some of the states that are implementing these types of things, so you have a checks and balances. So prior to writing a new prescription, they'll go on there and they'll check this. They'll check the patient, they'll see if there's a prior prescription, dosages and all that, and then they'll determine, okay, are they doctor shopping? Is this a legitimate thing? Can I help them out? So the doctors, prior to issuing anything, they'll go on and they'll check. You know how they come in, they talk to you, the nurse comes in, does all this stuff, the doctor comes in, takes care of you. Okay, I'll be right back with your prescription, and they leave. I don't know what happens, that's that magic time. And then they come back and they have a prescription. Thank you very much, this is what you're gonna do. And then now they give you the care papers of what to watch for and all that. So before they issue the prescription, they'll go in and they'll sit down quick. And this is, I realize everyone's busy, everyone already has 1,000 things to do, but think about the potential that this can do for us. They sit down and they pull up your name on the thing, Toby Terrell. What prescriptions does Toby Terrell currently have? Okay. So then they would look and they'd say, okay, I want to issue this prescription to this guy. So they would put it on there and they'd enter it in, zap, it goes to the database. So then that person leaves, the patient leaves, goes to the pharmacist, gives them the prescription, which narcotics, you got to have the paper, correct? Gives them the prescription, the pharmacist says, okay, thanks, because everything's computer now. Pulls it up, takes a look, okay, here's the patient, here's the doctor that prescribed it, this is what was prescribed, because believe it or not, some people do try to modify prescriptions or write their own. Yeah, we've run into that. They'll take a look at the validity of it. They'll check for recently issued prescriptions. Did they get one here and then go to Ridley's? Did they go to Ridley's and then come here? and try to fill one? Did they go to Kmart in Rock Springs or Jackson? Are they doctor shopping? Or are they trying to fill them all over? Then they report that they filled up that prescription. They put it on there. So you have the doctor to the patient, patient to the pharmacist, pharmacist to the thing saying it's filled. Now let's say they're naughty. Okay, we work with the Works program through the pharmacy board, as I mentioned before. With reasonable suspicion, we fill it out, we sign saying we swear that we think this person is involved in naughty activities, a statute violation of blah, 35-7-1031, whatever it is. We send that off, they go through all their records, and they send it to us. The poopy part of that, it's not required. So not all pharmacies are using this program, so we're not getting a valid picture of what's going on. We're not getting all the colors on this picture. So we see some that are really responsible, that do report stuff, and we can use that information, but then we have others that don't. And so we're kind of in the blind. We have to go off of what we have as far as information. So it is a limited access, but with this program, as we still can, with reasonable suspicion, we can go in and take a look at what's been prescribed. So if we find little Johnny and he has 5 pills in his hand, does he really have a script for that or no? Okay. And then at the same time, if you have someone who's illegally distributing the prescribed substances, when it gets to the court with the charges, the court reports it to this program. So the doctors can see it when they pull it up, because without mentioning names, we've actually had people in our community sell prescribed medications. Our clinic says, no mas, dude, you obviously don't need it if you're selling it. And they say, okay, they hop in their car and they go to Rock Springs and go somewhere else, get a prescription, come back and try to fill it. Okay, this is just a way that hopefully we can stop that. I mean, everything that we do to try to prevent, it seems like they come up with a way to beat, but job security, I guess. But this is, and I give full credit to the task force. This is their baby as far as what's working, and they're dealing with the legislatures and everything else. So, Marty, winky winky. I thought of this when I was doing this presentation. Complaining about a problem without proposing a solution is called whining by Teddy Roosevelt. I actually have that on my wall, and I've had it there for a while. But that's what I think they're doing. I mean, for years we've sat there and go, what the heck is going on? And we're more reactive to everything than proactive. And so kudos, thank you. And to have a sheriff that supports that. Because it's not necessarily a popular thing, even with the pharmacy board and some other folks. So that's basically the presentation, but with all the stuff coming from Colorado, with the marijuana, you know, I've talked a lot of negative. But there's definite positives that come from Colorado. Go Rocky. Anybody else in here Rockies fan? Okay. So thank you for your time. The schedule's off a little bit, but I started a little earlier. If you have any questions, I do have some cards I can hand out. Also, my information's right there. You can call me anytime. Dispatch can reach me 24/7. Any drug information that you have, please call. I don't care when it is. I don't care what it is. You could have that one little piece of Elvis's face on that jigsaw puzzle that we need to finish off the picture.